Hi, my name is Susanna White and I specialise in movement for pelvic health. So generally I work with people who are suffering from mainly three things. So the first thing is diastasis, which normally occurs during pregnancy. It can occur outside of pregnancy, but most times it's because of pregnancy, and that's a separation of the rectus abdominis at the linea alba. The second thing that I specialise in is incontinence, and that can be stress incontinence, it can be urge incontinence, or it can be an overactive bladder. So there's always things to ask a lot of questions about and see what actual incontinence is happening. And that can be urinary, and it can also be fecal incontinence. So I'm always open to a whole variety of things that can be going on in the female body. And the third thing that I specialise in, which is particularly important for me personally, is that I specialise in prolapse. Prolapse, there is a lot of prolapses, but the main three prolapses are bladder, uterus, and prolapse of the rectum. And this is when one or maybe two or three of your internal organs come down into the vagina and in severe cases can come out. Now, I think slightly differently to normal medical science in that I try and work with the whole body. So when you come to see me or when I'm helping a person, we look at the whole system. So we start from the feet, we work up the whole body posturally. We work with breath techniques, which is one of the most important things that you can do. We look into being hypotonic or hypertonic, meaning that there is not enough muscle integrity or there's too much muscle stimulation going on. And we also think about this as a whole holistic setting. And the last thing that I really focus on is regulating your nervous system. So any sort of stresses from any part of your life can have multiple implications in your pelvic health. So it's really important that we get to the root cause and look at the whole big picture when we're looking at pelvic health. And I'm going to be sharing with you some of the main things that I look at and some of the most interesting things for me when I'm working with people. So I hope you enjoy some of the little things that we have coming up. Hi, during this session we are going to be looking at diaphragmatic breathing. So diaphragmatic breathing is the most crucial part of pelvic health. And diaphragmatic breathing really just means that when you breathe, you are allowing your diaphragm to release. And that is so important, and I'm going to go through exactly why that is so important right now. So you have the diaphragm, and it sits here in your body. So it's right in the rib cage, it's here. And this is completely linked to your pelvic floor. So nothing can happen in your pelvic floor if nothing happens in your diaphragm. And we call this your internal pressure canister. So a lot of pelvic health problems happen because this canister becomes too pressurized. And when something becomes too pressurized, it releases. And that can cause prolapse, and that can cause incontinence. So when I'm working with someone, when I'm working with you today, I'm going to be checking whereabouts your breath is landing. So we have three types of breathers. You can breathe into your chest, we have belly breathers, and we have ribcage breathers. And I'm going to be encouraging you as much as possible to create this lateral breath. When we talk about pelvic health, the main thing that we're doing is encouraging the pelvic floor to completely release and completely recoil. And that happens when the diaphragm is allowed to completely release and completely recoil. This can only happen if you manage to get your rib cage out of the way. So if the rib cage is stuck, and your belly breathing or your chest breathing, it means that nothing happens in the pelvic floor. So that can even lead your pelvic floor to being incredibly weak or incredibly tight. And the most frustrating thing about pelvic health is that the same things happen whether your pelvic floor is tight or weak. So a lot of women come to me thinking that they're so weak, they haven't used their pelvic floor, whereas actually they have an incredibly pressurized canister and their pelvic floor is super strong, but their circumstances that are happening to them are because they have never learned how to release. And the release will only happen with breath. So if you lie down on your back, Sarah is very kindly demonstrating for me, so I don't have to do it myself. The first thing that I do is I'm just going to place my hand in this cavity where the diaphragm is, and I'm going to ask Sarah to take a nice deep inhale through her nose, and then exhale through an open mouth. So Sarah has just demonstrated the most beautiful diaphragmatic breath. So we're going to go through it. And then the main thing that you're looking at is when you place your hand into your rib cage, is there any tension? So we're looking, and you can do this yourself at home. You can check just down the inside of the rib cage to see if there's any tension. And you can go all the way down. Now you can do this with your hands. You can also take some oil and roll down. That's a really nice diaphragm release, just to roll down. And you can also take a fascial release ball. I use these all the time, and Sarah has told me that there will be a link to these underneath my videos, so that if you do want to use these are incredible for all fascial release, and pelvic health really relies quite deeply on being able to release the fascial system, and I'll explain more in a later video. But for now, you can use the balls to just roll down the inside of the ribcage, and we can already hear that there's definitely some release happening in Sarah's ribs when we do this. Good. So when we're looking at ribcage health, the other thing that we want to be able to check is there the option to grab hold of the ribs? So when we're looking at do the ribcage move, there's 4 levels, and we're aiming to actually be at level 4. So when you're checking for this release, so when you've done your initial release, you'll come down the ribcage and you see, so level 1 would be that I can just put my hand onto the ribcage. Level 2 is that I've got an option to come slightly in. Level 3 is that I can come all the way in. And then level 4 is if I can get in, which I think I can on Sarah, and actually hold the rib. So this is really important. So we want the most released ribs possible, so that when you inhale, the diaphragm releases and the pelvic floor releases, and when you exhale, the diaphragm lifts and the pelvic floor lifts as well. The other thing that we're just checking for, so rib cage flare is the other thing. And when we're looking for rib cage flare, it's more prevalent in people who have given birth. Normally, the left side is more in flare than the right side, and I can see that on Sarah. She has a little bit more flare on the left side than the right side. So even though we're talking about getting the rib cage out of the way for your inhale, it is as important as bringing the rib cage back in. So that's the other thing that you want to think. You can inhale to open them, but you're also going to exhale to bring the rib cage back down and in. So there is that equalizing. We're always trying to find that neutrality between being open and being closed, and being tight and being loose. We're always trying to find that nice midway path. So let's have a go. Now, what I will demonstrate on Sarah is that I'm going to have my hands on a rib cage, but you can place your own hands on the rib cage. And before we finish, I'll show you how you can use a band or a yoga strap to give you some feedback, because sometimes it's really important that you get feedback whilst you're doing it. So just encourages you to know that you're doing it correctly. So with my hands on your ribs, you're going to take a nice deep inhale through your nose. And then as you exhale, we're just going to allow the ribcage to close back down. Beautiful. That's perfect. And what Sarah actually demonstrated, which I forgot to say, was that the exhale is as soft and smooth and slow as the inhale. Now, there is two camps. You can exhale through your nose, but there is a huge link between jaw tension and pelvic floor tension. So if you're doing this and you're inhaling and exhaling through your nose, you have to be completely sure that the exhale through your nose hasn't put any tension in your jaw. And if you feel like that tension has come into your jaw, open your mouth, relax your jaw, and on your exhale, think about steaming up a window in front of you. So your exhale is soft and slow because we don't want the exhale to cause any tension in your jaw whatsoever. So I am going to go through a really beautiful relaxation technique to bring you into your diaphragmatic breath. And one of the things that we talk about a lot in pelvic health is stress, and how stress can cause all of these problems to be exacerbated. And what we're trying to do is always work in your parasympathetic nervous system. So we're always trying to work in a place where your mind and body is ready to rest, digest, and heal. So the inhale is hopefully going to be around 6 counts, and your exhale is going to hopefully be around 8 counts. We talk a lot about the vagus nerve because that is so linked to your stress response. And the vagus nerve plays a really big role in diaphragmatic breath because the vagus nerve comes through the midline of the rib cage. So when you inhale and open the ribs, and you exhale and you close the ribs, you actually stimulate the vagus nerve with every breath. So we know that making your exhale longer than your inhale stimulates the vagus nerve, and we know that diaphragmatic breathing stimulates the vagus nerve. So this will automatically put you in a place to rest, digest, and heal, which is so paramount for pelvic health. So very simple exercise. It is 3 breaths. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Exhale is longer than the inhale. After your 3rd exhale, we're going to take a pause. There's going to be no breath whatsoever. You're going to be in a state of complete emptiness. And in that moment, I'm going to ask you to relax the muscles around your eyes, relax the muscles around your jaw, and just let go of your shoulders. And I want you to feel how freeing those 3 things can feel in your body in relation to encouraging you into this place of healing before we even start the work for pelvic floor dysfunction. So when you're ready, have your eyes closed. It just helps you be really internal. I'll place my hands on your ribcage to encourage the ribcage to open. As you inhale, expand the ribs out to the side. And as you exhale, just release the ribcage down into the center. Inhale to expand. Beautiful. Opening the ribs out to the side. And exhale to release down to the center. Inhale to expand the ribcage nice and wide. And exhale to release down into the center. Beautiful. At the end of this exhale, you're going to take a pause. There's going to be no breath. And in this pause, I'm going to ask you to release the muscles around your eyes. Release the muscles around your jaw. Completely let go of your shoulders. Stay for as long as you feel comfortable. And then when you are ready, you can inhale. And exhale. Beautiful. Very nice. So I'm going to ask Sarah in our own time to come up to sitting. And we're going to go a little bit more in depth with the diaphragmatic breathing. And I'm going to give you things that you can think about to help you feel that expansion. So if Sarah makes her way up to sitting, and you can sit on a block. Now, when you're doing this work, you can be sitting on a chair, on a sofa, you can be in bed. I'm going to ask Sarah to sit up on a block and maybe with her legs crossed if that's comfortable for her. Now, you'll probably be doing this work by yourself, so you're not going to have anyone next to you to hold onto your rib cage. So a really simple way of getting feedback is to have the strap behind you, I don't want to whip you, and cross it over in front, and then you're going to hold the strap out like this. So there's a little bit of tension. Now, we're always looking for really good alignment when you're doing this diaphragmatic breath work. So the first thing I'm going to ask Sarah to do is I'm going to ask you to flex both of your feet. Now, there is studies showing that when your feet are in dorsiflexion, your pelvic floor is 95% more switched on. So when we're doing anything relating to pelvic floor, we want that talking between the pelvis and the feet, and they're so linked. So we always do dorsiflexion. So that can be standing, that can be on all fours with the toes tucked under behind you, and when you're sitting, your feet are inflexed. So the other thing, which might feel a little bit strange, when we're thinking about pelvic health, we always want the pubis to be in line with the bladder and the uterus. So there is always a slight shift forward with the rib cage on top of the hips, and you actually look pretty good here. So you don't want to be lean back. That's the most important thing, is to be slightly leaned forward so that you're lining up your diaphragms. And in diaphragms within pelvic health, we talk about the ankle diaphragm, the pubis diaphragm, the actual diaphragm, and the diaphragm in your neck as well. So we want to make sure they're all in alignment so that we are really encouraging that stacking of pubis, bladder, and uterus. And we know that in prolapse, these two can be flung back. So if we are thinking about lifting prolapse, when we do the breath work, we always give them the most encouragement to be back in their normal position or in their correct anatomical position. So holding onto your strap, you can have your gaze soft or your eyes closed, and I'm going to ask you to lengthen through the crown of your head and keep your chin quite up so the chin's not dropped. I'm going to give you something to think about. I have two favorite ones, and I'll teach you both, and then when you're practicing, you can choose which one you like the best. So if you imagine that your rib cage, floating ribs at the bottom and closed ribs at the top, is part of a giant umbrella. And when you inhale, you're going to open that umbrella all the way up to the top. And when you exhale, the umbrella closes down, but the crown of your head actually lifts up. So when you inhale, you find that opening of the umbrella to find expanse. But when you exhale and the ribcage closes down, you find the length in your spine. So we're encouraging widthways movement, and we're encouraging lengthways movement all the time. Beautiful, very nice. And the second one, so when we're thinking about inhaling and filling our lungs up and opening our rib cage, sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, you can be really focused on the front of your body. So it's a lot of, we're in the front of our body, everything is happening in front of us, whereas actually the lungs are closer to the back of our body. And they're actually a lot lower down than you would think they are. So sometimes I like to think that you have these giant wings on your back. And if you think of your spine, and then the way that the rib cage attaches into the spine, when you inhale, you want to think about that rib cage moving away from the spine, and the exhale to bring it back in. and see if that gives you a bit of a different feeling, rather than, and this is especially important for people who do have rib flare, is to bring your attention into your back body so that you have less chance of encouraging any rib flare in the front body. So we'll try that one with your eyes closed or your gaze soft. As you inhale, think about the ribcage moving away from your spine. And as you exhale, lift your chin and lift up from the crown of your head. Beautiful. Inhale to expand through the lungs, through the back body, moving away from the spine. And then exhale to lengthen and grow. Beautiful. So nice and relax. So I hope this session has given you some things to think about. The main thing is that we're encouraging a complete release and a complete recoil through the diaphragm being attached to the pelvic floor, in allowing the rib cage to move so that the diaphragm can move. Well done.
Amazing. Thank you.